So, I saw Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and it had horror elements, which means I loved it. It had, spoilers, it had Mr. Fantastic and Professor X, and that was cool. Look, I could talk about all this stuff and more, but the thing is, I actually can't. Because it's all buried under one major thing I fixated on, and it's that one thing that's caused me to drop the project I was working on in favor of this. So, let's just rush the review side of things out of the way. From what I recall, Benny Cumberbatch and Elizabeth Olsen are both electric. There's lots of fun Sam Raimi doing fun Sam Raimi horror stuff. The score by Danny Elfman is perfectly adequate. I loved the octopus monster from that old Marvel vs. Capcom game. This is not that octopus. Okay. That's done. Now, let's get to why we're actually here.
Hydra.
Content warning for discussions of homophobia, transphobia, and suicide. This video was sponsored by nobody, which is why I'd very much appreciate it if you'd like, share, subscribe, and hit the ring-a-ding thing. I would just adore you for that. There are many, many artistic merit critiques that could be laid at the feet of Disney's cinematic juggernaut, and I am not going to argue for or against them. If it's high art, well, I like high art. If it's trash, well, I like trash. And I really, really love confusing the two. One value I see in these movies is a trait they honestly share with their source material. They are, intentionally or unintentionally, so reflective of their zeitgeist it's ridiculous. They are so almost magically of the period they are made in and or released into. Special mention goes to Thor Ragnarok and particularly Captain America Winter Soldier, which thematically didn't reflect, but rather prophesized, the near future of American society. All MCU works to some extent share this quality. They echo our hopes, our fears, and our very, very, very real current events. Each could be seen as the result of the latest US psych exam. What's on our minds, or occasionally what's going to be. And being that the US is a massive, massive military empire, it sometimes even covers broader geographies than that. MOM wasn't as blatantly clear as some of them. It's very non-specific, very vibe zone. But that vibe was too blatant, too strong a thing for me not to notice and make me fixate on it, and boy, did I ever fixate on it. I was excited for Multiverse of Madness because I am such a horror fangirl. And some person promised it was going to be the MCU's first horror film. But I didn't realize that the horror of it wasn't just going to be the bad trip psychedelica, and the octopus monster, and the zombies, and slasher movie tropes. No. The primary horror I found there was the horror of, well, the horror of being me, of being us, of what is going on, of what is being done to us, and of what will be done to us if what's going on is not stopped. So Wanda in this movie is a bit like a lot of super straight men in America. Wanda's not doing well. Due to the influence of a malevolent spell book, she has regressed from where she ended in WandaVision, and now, instead of being a combination victim, unintentional villain, repentant hero, we find out 20 minutes in she is the very, very, very intentional villain. I love Wanda, and I can't say I was thrilled by that. Personally, I came out of WandaVision just hoping she'd found the path to some peace. I'd hoped she'd hook back up with new vision, they'd have the kids for real, and the kids would age naturally, and Wanda, she'd get some kind of happiness, or at least a little bit of stability with some of her trauma worked out. Nope! Now instead of causing a whole town of people a huge amount of suffering to have the idealistic family life she's always wanted, suburban house, the husband, the 2 kids, the dog, Wanda's now willing to settle for just the 2 kids. And she's only going to kill 1 child and steal that child's power to transverse the multiverse to accomplish this. She is very, very, very sorry, but also very, very not sorry, cause her children need her, and she needs them, and damn it, she just needs this. I'm being kind of snarky right now, but the truth is, I felt a great deal for Wanda, and the mind-boggling levels of trauma after trauma after trauma she's endured that led to the evil magic book's influence on her, resulting in the manifestation of her evil side being all about that Afiva side. Now look, I am informed by the internet that Wanda's character and her struggle has meant a lot to the LGBTQIA+ community. Many of us relate with her, particularly her struggle in WandaVision. So, as I'm getting into this, please understand, I'm not saying anything about Wanda as a character, this version or otherwise. I'm also not trying to take something away that's meant so much to people like me. I'm just saying this is the way I see this particular film reflecting current things going on in our reality. Terrible, terrible things. So, I am not calling Wanda a TERF. I am not calling Wanda a transphobe or a homophobe. Given that her baby boy Billy in the comics is apparently gay, I don't know much about her kids as characters in the comics, to be frank. But from what I've seen of Wanda's characteristics as a mama, she'd love her kids the same if either or both are LGBTQIA+ in the MCU. God, that's a lot of letters. And she'd protect them like a cat on some abusable chemical that I do not have enough of right now. But I am saying that within the text of this film, she is serving as the representation not of homophobes or transphobes, but of a very old, very pernicious mindset that is linked not exclusively to those groups, but I certainly associate it with them. Namely, I'm doing this for my family, and I'm doing this for my/the children, or in its classical form.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
Think of the children, think of the family arguments, are arguments that, more often than not, are justifications for horrible things, and used to misdirect empathy to shut down rational thought and debate. I'd say most awful things in history, if they were talked over at all, have involved the argument, think of the children, think of the family. Think of the children, think of the family. Whose children? What children? What kind of family, specifically? As a concept, it's obsessed with purity. As a phrase, it grew out of moral panic. It is a rhetorical device that rarely seems to benefit kids in any way, and often works to the detriment of certain groups, including children in certain groups. It is a thought-terminating cliché, which it certainly serves as for Wanda when she uses it in the film. She doesn't have to think too hard about the people she's killing, 'cause it's for her family. Also, the name of the kid Wanda's trying to kill so she can have her ideal family life, the kid's name is America, and I didn't know it while I was watching the movie, 'cause I'd never encountered the character America Chavez before. But I just got this slightly suspicious feeling. Suspicions from the Vibe Zone! And yeah, in the comics, America is canonically gay. An aspect Disney made the decision not to focus on. Something I was also unaware of, but it doesn't surprise me at all. Though in the film, America does have 2 moms that can be easily cut out for unapproving audiences. Whoa! Whoa, 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 whoa! Bambi of the past, you young, sexy, not as sexy as me, foolish and over-emotional firebrand you. it turns out, no fault of your own, it turns out you're saying some stuff that is only mostly fair. Hi, it's me, Bambi, from way off in the future. This thing has already been loaded and dinged for copyright once that far off in the future. And the interns have just now provided some necessary information that they did not provide younger Bambi.
Fools! Idiots! Imbeciles!
The truth is, my freaky darlings, Disney has done the barest of bare minimums with those few seconds of America's Two Moms. They refused to cut it from the Saudi Arabia release when it was caught by their censors. As of right now, they have still refused to do so. That's one small toenail forward for the queer community in an age where US society is taking giant, bounding, gravity-defying leaps backwards. Now, younger Bambi is going to say some other mean stuff about Disney later on in this video, but this sentiment can be applied to most, if not all, of the film industry, which is truly the source of her chagrin, her anger. But the House of Mouse is a strong, terrifying megacorporation, and I know that they can take the criticism without too many tears. A criticism that has easily applied to them for years before now, and that's not even getting into a lot of the other fair criticism that could be laid at their feet. So no, I'm not doing a retraction, because I see no evidence that this isn't anything other than what it always has been. A pittance, thrown to us when a corporation believes it's politically and economically convenient, to be dropped and denied when it's no longer good for business. But I am giving credit where credit is due. Disney. Good job. You could do so much more, but good job. Do more, Disney. I'm clapping my hands because I believe in you. Now, I'm not saying I've got a horse in this race, but Wanda's crusade to acquire her perfect family life for the sake of her children reflects the current reign of terror that red states are perpetrating on the queer community. You know, the staggering number of bills that ban the mention of queer existence from schools. I wonder how that's going to work out when two dads show up for parents' night. But it's very Maggie Thatcher of them. You've gotta love the 80s. Or bills that imprison supportive doctors and parents, or at least take trans kids away from loving families and forcibly detransition them, etc., etc. I mean, that's just a gentle cross-section. Don't get me started about how they want to warn people about fictional us on TV. And let's not forget those abortion bans, including the talk of a possible federal-level ban after the likely overturning of Roe v. Wade, all of which means the end of the right to bodily autonomy, which ain't too good for the queers, which I will now be using as an umbrella term for the people being threatened by this. Furthermore, there has been the triumphant return of the slanderous scare tactic of queers as child predators that had been missing, at least in mass, for a good long time that apparently, aw shucks, the reactionaries had just been keeping warm in their back pockets. All of this means attacks on queer people, but particularly queer children for whom suicide rates have just been skyrocketing in the states that have passed these laws. Now, once more, is this what Wanda's about? Her character? No, but I can't help but see it reflected in the story, her motivation and how she's framed. The same way I see the fashion infiltration of the US government going from closeted to out and proud in Captain America and Winter Soldier. Because one of the major motivations, arguments, and rallying cries I've heard anti-queer reactionaries use my entire life is that oldie but goldie, think of the children and protecting the family. To that I ask again, what kind of children, huh? What kind of family? Why the one that Wanda wanted so bad in WandaVision? The ideal ones, in the ideal life, in the ideal America that has never been a reality. The one that, much like Doctor Strange told Wanda of her children in the film, has never existed, has never been anything more than a tragic delusion that's hurt massive amounts of people. In spite of the damage she causes, I was very sympathetic to her desire in WandaVision. And I think upon rewatch of WandaVision, I still will be, but I can't be here. Not with how it's laid out in this text. Not with the vibes. It's very f***ing different. Easy to say, actually. She's certainly not the protagonist here. She's the monster. The Wicked Witch. And from the reveal 20 minutes in until her final scene, that's how she's presented. She's not unintentionally making a bunch of people suffer through her trauma. No. Here, she's willing to kill a kid. And she kills a whole bunch of people, slaughters them trying to get what she wants. Just like the anti-queer reactionaries. Those that are unwilling to perform heinous, often deadly physical violence on us, are at least willing to let queer people, queer kids, suffer and die so they can have their ideal America. Which is, to be frank, but call me Bambi, an even bigger delusion than Wanda's. At least Wanda would be able to hop about the multiverse until she got what she wanted, pop into a universe where variant Wanda died and the kids are orphaned. If she's got the power, that would work. Kids don't even need to know how she got it. Have the reactionaries maybe thought of moving to another universe more suitable to them? Or maybe Antarctica? I'm sorry to the small amount of scientists living in Antarctica. I've been trying to move them out there for years. I just don't know where else they might be happy. Given the non-specific route the film takes, this all would have worked way better if the villain with the for the children motivation was a man in a suit instead of Wanda. And, of course, it would have worked better if America was confirmed in film to be gay, but I work with the text I'm given. I would also mention a connection can be made to the fact Wanda starts out as the weapon of a reactionary movement, whose history and ideology comes out of the NSP, who famously persecuted, brutalized, and murdered us. It's an interesting reversal, see? Wanda starts out there, but by the time she lands on her for the children, for the family rampage, she's already been de-radicalized from Hydra's mostly vague and non-specified brainwashing. Meanwhile, in our world, the for the children, for the family sentiment is often used to download anti-queer ideology into people. And from there, once embraced, it's been shown that anti-queer ideology is a slick pipeline to other forms of reaction. Wanda went from Hail Hydra to For the Children, and those two stages are disconnected. In our world, on the other hand, people go from anti-queer ideology to saying Hail Hydra, and end up becoming weapons for reactionary movements. On another note, even though, and this doesn't excuse the stuff I honestly believe Wanda actually is to blame for, like Ultron. Wanda is to blame for Ultron, not the deaths of the civilians in Civil War. I did honestly dig that she called out the double standard these stories have for powerful men doing screwed up or questionable stuff, and how easily they are forgiven. I digress. Back on topic, there's other stuff I haven't mentioned yet, like Wanda's arguments of how reasonable she's being. How kind. When the question at hand is whether or not America Chavez will be allowed to continue to exist or not. God! What does that remind me of? Let me be blunt, Wanda isn't after this kid because her powers are so dangerous to the multiverse and it will save lives. It's not a utilitarian thing. I don't have room for the kind of thing it is. It's outside the scope of this video. No, it's entirely just wanting to live in her preferential reality. You know, like America's. This one's. Preferential reality where someone isn't trying to murder her. That said, the thing that's as important as Wanda's motive to me in this reading is the fact that throughout the film, Doctor Strange and America Chavez are running. Wanda is basically a slasher villain mowing through anything in her way because anything for her children, anything for her family, it doesn't matter how many people have to die and suffer. They are inconsequential cause they are in the way of her ideal life. You know, the the way that families with trans kids are fleeing for their lives from states that have criminalized them, and in the near future, I have a feeling many of us will be fleeing the country if we're lucky enough to find a place to run to, and we're capable of doing so. Not all of us can. Either that, or many of us will be forced back into the closet to survive. Oh, and in case you're wondering, if things continue on the way it is for trans people in the United States, the rest of the letters in the queer alphabet will be fleeing for their lives en masse. The queer's only options in the face of such horror gaining power reduced to running and hiding. Of course, we can stand against the tide, and many of us are, and more of us will. But like America, our best chance for survival actually lies in having allies who have more power and authority than us. Allies taking active action. America couldn't make it through without Doc Strange's help. We will not be able to make it through without the help from our cis and straight family and friends and just good, decent, straight and cis people who care about other humans who are in danger. Eventually, America and Doctor Strange have to stand together against Wanda. That said, at the end of the film, what actually stops Wanda is shame. When our own children see what she has become, what she is doing. Which, as a metaphor for what's going on, I read it as the representation of the younger generation tending to be less prejudiced than the previous, appalled by their parents' behavior. I also think that when applied as a reflection, it becomes overly optimistic. And I am an optimist. The real-life slasher movie monsters with their for-the-children mindset are, I'll say, as likely to disown their own kids if they get to, "Mom, stop hurting the queer people." But it certainly works for Wanda as a character in the story the creatives are telling, no denying that. So, what's this all about, huh? This video. Well, this film is for me a new kind of experience in queer horror. In the past, the way the outsider, the creatures, have been coded has had the queer community finding themselves in the monsters and villains, chased about with torches and pitchforks. There's several great video essays on this topic. We find ourselves reflected in such places not only because of coding, but because, well, there aren't many of us in film. We find ourselves where we can. Here, it's an interesting reversal, and I've never seen this before. I've never seen us so clearly in the victim/hero of a horror film. Next time, it would be nice to just go full bore and actually have some blatant queer main characters. But this text, to me, is, in a metaphorical way, recognizing the horror of being us, chased by the monsters and the feeling that we can't stop all the terrible things that are coming for us. Now, I'm aware that, from what I've laid out, the argument could be made that any slasher movie or many a chase movie could be this kind of vague queer horror, but it's that vibe. And the vibe for me comes from the motivation of the monster doing the chasing. What Freddy was doing to the kids on Elm Street wasn't said to be for the health of the kids. This feeling is new. I've never seen this before, never felt this way before. In spite of the way Disney constantly likes to screw us over for their bottom line in the most craven, cowardly manner possible, make a movie with 2 seconds of footage so you can deny our existence when it goes overseas, kind of appreciate the sense of recognition this gives me. The recognition of this fundamental aspect of our current lives, as we are right now being pushed back towards the closet and likely someplace even worse. Even if it was unintentional, I saw recognition there. For their children, they are going to kill gay America in an attempt to achieve a fantasy. Like many metaphors, Wanda's rampage in MOM is not a total one-to-one comparison. I fully admit that. After all, I totally believe Wanda's motivation is 100% honest. Her motivation that reflects in simplified form the reactionary rhetoric. Something I do not believe at all of our real-world reactionaries. Do they have a fantasy? Yeah. Does it involve the family? Oh, does it? But their fantasy IMO is actually far more about power and hierarchy, unlike Wanda's. Metaphors are usually not, nor do they have to be one-to-one comparisons. Tolkien, author of Lord of the Rings, said that his books weren't about World War II, and I believed him when he said he didn't intend them to be. But it doesn't take much work to see how, given the themes and the vibes, even though he didn't intend to do so, Lord of the Rings can be easily read to be awfully about World War II. Wanda's character and motivation is one thing. What it represents metaphorically within this story to me is something else entirely. That said, I really don't like seeing Wanda in the role as the monster here. This monster, this real monster. Hopefully in the next work Wanda's in, she can represent something more positive. I really do love her as a character. But the text says what the text says, or at least it says what it says to me. Now, just in case anyone thinks my reading is wrong, that the evidence isn't there, that I'm just projecting my anxieties onto this film, sure, that's possible, but I've never felt that possibility makes a reading any less true. But let's say for the sake of argument, it does make my reading invalid. I'm making nothing into something. Well, that's because there's something on my mind that I can't stop thinking about for some reason. Want to help me get it off my mind so I can think a little more clearly? Help me put an end to those real-world horrors, and I won't be jumping at shadows in the media I'm trying to enjoy. 'Cause, literally, I spent this entire goddamn movie going, am I the only one that is seeing this? So, seriously, am I the only one that is seeing this? Let me know in the comments below. Now, listen. I'm leaving resources and places to donate below if anyone who finds this is in need, or if anyone who sees this has a quantum of help they can give. There are people, families, kids out there that really need help. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope to be seeing you all again very, very soon. Until then, my freaky darlings, eins, zwei, drei, and goodbye.